On November 5th, 1895, the St. Louis Dispatch reads, "Her wealth is nothing now. Priscilla Henry, the richest and wickedest wench in St. Louis, is dead."
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Haas.
I'm CeCe.
Today we got a hot topic for you. Her name, once whispered from the ports of New Orleans to the river towns of Minneapolis, was known to gamblers, steamboat captains, and hustlers alike. Her house was a magnet for the lawless and the lost, but behind the gilded mirrors in sin-soaked halls was a story far more complex than most dared to imagine.
Yeah. So Priscilla Henry was born enslaved in Alabama in 1829. She was the youngest of 6 children and spent the first 46 years of her life enslaved on the Forks of Cypress plantation that was owned by slaveholder James Jackson Jr. Yeah. And this plantation was located near Florence, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And the Jacksons initially refused to free the slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed.
Right.
And they waited months to tell Henry and the others that was enslaved on this plantation that they were free.
Right. And when she finally received her papers for freedom, she decided to go north. Mm-hmm. As she had heard that you could make more money as a washerwoman in St. Louis. And at that time, it was a booming city crowded with young single men. Ooh. So she gathered her baby sister, which at that time I think she was like a hip baby. Mm-hmm. Baby sister Nancy.
Yeah.
And they moved north to St. Louis, Missouri in 1866.
That's right. And though no known photographs of Priscilla Henry exist or survive to this date, right, she was described as being a plump but handsome woman.
Handsome.
Right, very handsome. And one brothel patron in some court records described her as having the prettiest brown skin that he'd ever seen and having a very ample bosom.
An ample bosom.
Ample bosom, yes.
Ample bosom. I guess that is the language of that time.
Yes, definitely.
She had an ample bosom.
A very ample bosom, right. They don't call the bazungas like we call them today.
Yeah, they don't say it like that.
They don't say that, yeah.
So she first settled into working downtown as a maid in the Lindell Hotel. Mm-hmm. And the Lindell was once the largest hotel in North America that was 6 stories high, and I think it had 530 rooms.
That's a lot, yeah.
That is. So there, Priscilla cleaned toilets and spittoons in exchange for room and board. And she moved for a new life and ironically found herself elbow deep in spittoons.
That's not a good imagery.
It's not. I mean, enough spittoons to drown a person, they say.
Yes, that's pretty.
That's got to be a miserable existence.
So was it because did they have all these spittoons because people were chewing tobacco?
Well, 530 rooms. I can imagine that there was just spittoons. If you can just imagine it, walking down the hall and just
but why is everyone spitting? But it doesn't make sense. Why is everyone spitting?
Why are they chewing tobacco so much? They had to be chewing tobacco.
They were chewing tobacco.
They had to be chewing tobacco.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
That had to be what that was.
So they weren't smokers like our society became.
They had to been smoking, but that's a good question whether or not chewing tobacco was popular.
Okay.
And tobacco has always been very popular. Yeah. Tobacco was popular when the settlers first moved here.
I mean, I grew up down south, and it was a lot of white and black people who chewed tobacco.
That would be a good one to do, actually. When did people start chewing tobacco?
Probably all their life. I mean, probably when they first encountered
When did they start putting it in their... No, I'm not... I mean, that was a... the first you started seeing that was in the Western movies. So it makes sense. It makes sense that it was around this time of her life.
Well, they grew tobacco. So hey.
But digress.
Sorry.
back to the elbow deep in spittoon and it being so much that it drowned her. The workload, that she experienced at this hotel was just overwhelming. It was heavy. The hours were long, and unfortunately, it was very typical for Black women of her status to be doing this type of work. You know, and Priscilla she didn't feel it. She was growing very sick of this type of work.
But then, on March 30th, 1867, fate stepped in, and the Lindell Hotel burned to the ground.
Hold on. Do you think that was not an intentional thing? Like, I could just see Priscilla going around, on her tippy toes with the light in her, with the fire. You know what I'm saying? I mean, did she burn that place down?
I wouldn't say
come on.
I wouldn't go that far.
That wouldn't make sense.
That she burned the place down.
That wouldn't make sense.
But being that the place had burned down and she was also getting room and board there, she ended up moving into a boarding house for Black women, which at that time was a very polite way to say a discreet house for doing horizontal business, okay? If y'all know what I mean. And she eventually opened a washboard laundry in the alley behind the Charles house, which was where she was boarding at. But, soap doesn't pay like your cookie pays. So she began taking on clients one cookie at a time. And around this time is where she met Thomas R. Howard, who was a former Confederate soldier with a head wound. And they say here that he also had a wounded ego and he had a limp in more than one place. It's here. It's here in the article. It's not something that I've said. Okay?
I was gonna do something, but being a man, I can't even do it. I can't even dare to do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Being a middle-aged man at that, I can't even do it, man.
Don't do it. So before long, Thomas and Priscilla, they became an item, and together they turned her modest cookie business into a budding empire.
And for the most part, Priscilla was illiterate.
Yeah.
But she was intelligent and had a knack for numbers.
Definitely.
So with the financial help of her new lover, Thomas, combined with her wit and hard work, she became the owner and manager of two, not one, but two successful brothels on South 6th Street within a few years, while Thomas oversaw the nightly rendezvous between working girls and the patrons.
So he was kind of like the muscle, or maybe he was the one who took the money.
He collected that money.
Yeah, it makes sense because, especially him being a white man.
And also him being the financier behind it. I can imagine he wanted to keep his eyes on the money.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
But South 6th Street in St. Louis was pretty much a red light district, if you can imagine that. And so it was like the Vegas Strip of St. Louis. If you imagine that, but it was also known for crime, whiskey, and of course the vices.
Okay. So going back to what Haas just said, she owned two brothels, as we stated, and one was located at 208 South 6th Street, and it employed Black women who catered mostly to Black clientele. Yeah. And then while the other one was located at 206 South 6th Street, and it staffed white women, and it catered mostly to white clientele. But of course, white men of that time could visit either brothel, but Black men were
bastards.
Not.
Bastards.
Yeah. But anyway, so this business model of having these two different brothels, and of course being able to play the sides of having not only Black clients, but white clients as well. Right. It helped her to navigate, Missouri's harsh miscegenation laws, while also maximizing her profits. Right. And so her establishment was infamous, as her clientele includes city officials, wealthy merchants, and even visiting Confederate officers, and as well as many up-and-coming Black aristocrat, I want to say,
Well, somebody had to be going into the black brothel. I mean,
Yeah.
Now,
and I guess in order to have, back then, in order to, especially for black people coming out of slavery, they had to have disposable money. So,
well,
so that meant they probably had to be upper class to be.
If you look back to the movie that had Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor in it, Harlem Nights. Okay. It was gambling going on there. It was a nightlife thing going on.
But wasn't that like the 20s or
that was the 20s? That was
like during the Harlem.
Yeah, maybe right? So.
Yeah.
But my point is that the other thing that was in there were women.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, it was women of the night.
Yeah.
Now, on the 206 6th Street brothel, that was mostly meant for the white men, it was called the Royal. And it was so extravagant, it made politicians blush and ministers relapse.
Wait a minute, did you say relapse? I mean,
well,
so wait a minute.
Before a minister became a minister, they had their lives before that,
No, I think the word relapse implies that they were already lapsing and then they stopped lapsing and then now they relapse. I don't know why a minister would be relapsing.
It's because a man, a human being is a human being.
Oh, a man.
A human being is a human being. And maybe before they decided to take on the cloth and to start preaching the word, they had a life of sin and debauchery.
Well, what makes you think that these particular ministers were not married? They could have been married men.
Well, if their ministers were at the brothel anyway, they weren't there just trying to save souls. I mean, they could have been. They could have been.
Your wife, maybe I was there saving souls.
We saving souls tonight.
Oh my God.
But this royal brothel called the Royal. Mm-hmm. Oh man, it was described to have chandeliers and velvet walls.
Rooms named after Greek gods.
It had marble floors. I mean, the place was decadent.
Yeah, definitely.
It was described as the most sinful brothel in the Western frontier. Now imagine that. The whole Western frontier, this place was the best brothel that they'd ever seen at that time.
Yeah, because there was also another note in the court records where one patron said that he did not, when he visited the brothel, it was so sinful that he felt like he was literally in purgatory, but then at times he also felt like he was in heaven.
Did y'all see the sides of my mouth twist up like really? That sounds fun. But y'all,
you see my face? Do you see my face? Do you see my eyes rolling up to the top of my head? Okay, there we go.
but the good part about this brothel was that business was booming.
Yeah, it was,
and money was pouring in. And, Priscilla's brothels gained even more momentum after the social evil ordinance. Yeah, that's the real name.
Yeah. So, as Ha said, yes, there was an actual ordinance called the social evil ordinance, and it was passed on July 5th, 1870 in St. Louis. Yeah. And the purpose was to legalize, regulate, and control prostitution in an attempt to reduce, venereal disease and to curb criminal activity. Now, prostitution was only legalized within a certain district, which Haas already mentioned, the red light district. Right. So it wasn't the whole city, but just this particular area. Mm-hmm. And the prostitutes, get this, y'all, was required to register with the police and obtain a license.
Yeah.
And the women had to submit to bi-weekly medical examinations. And if they were found to be infected, they were involuntarily confined to to the social evil hospital for treatment.
Well, you know, back in that day, they did not treat women fairly at all.
No.
I mean, for the fact that if you disagreed with your husband, you could be thrown in the crazy house. I mean...
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Talking about involuntary confinement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So this right here is not far from... You know what the common things that was going on at that time was,
right?
You know,
right. And to add to being involuntarily committed to this hospital, the city also forced the sex workers to pay fines and fees to fund their confinement to the hospital, and so it was
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Now the community was not happy whatsoever about Priscilla's brothels. And, you know, what was interesting about that to me was that she was just another brothel that was in the red light district. But apparently her brothel was the most popular brothel. You know, all of the white women's husbands were slipping out to this place to have them a good time.
I mean, like I said, in the court records, they described this place as being that there was nothing that they said no to. Let's just put it that way. In this brothel,
yes,
anything you wanted, you could find in this particular brothel, and that was still. And even though, you know, we think about sex workers and we think about brothels, there was still. In during that era, there was still there were still boundaries, you know. But according to what the court record said, was that Priscilla's brothels had no boundaries. So whatever you wanted, so of course, when these men or even women, if there was women visiting the brothels too, you know, because I remember watching one movie back in the day where talking about brothels of the West, where men would come with their wives to the brothels, bring their wives to the brothels as well, to be with another. You know
what's interesting about these brothels, which were also saloons in the West, were that it seemed like downstairs was the bar in the restaurant where everybody would
eat.
You know, and then they just go on
Take
upstairs.
You on upstairs.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They going upstairs. But Priscilla's brothel was so fancy. You know, it was called the Gilded Palace of Sin. It was a house of debauchery.
Exactly.
A den of drunkenness is what the community thought about this place, right? But Priscilla, you know, to her, it was an empire.
Hey, she was building.
Yeah. And behind her brothels, gilded mirrors and perfume-drenched pillows was a story of grit, genius, scandal, and betrayal. So layered, it can make Netflix jealous.
All right, let's get into it. So, as we said, Priscilla was running these two brothels, so she became rich, just very, very rich for that time period. I mean, she was having things brought in on ships from France. You know, anything she wanted. This woman was just like Midas. Everything she touched was turning to gold.
She had real money.
Right.
You know, I mean, she had bought multiple properties.
Right.
And eventually, she purchased the Forks of Cypress plantation in Alabama, where she had once been enslaved.
Now that's some serious full circle.
Petty at its finest.
I mean, I wouldn't call it petty, but I mean, I get what you're saying though. I would not use the word petty.
She went back and bought that thing just to show off. You know what I'm saying?
But it's more than that. I mean, you got to remember that this woman had been enslaved for 46 years of her life.
That's true.
And she probably been worked to death. And she had a hard life. So I don't think it was petty at all. I think she went back and she was like, look, you know, I can own you as much as you can own me. You know, and that's that was a powerful thing.
That's powerful. That is powerful.
Yes.
But it is a pettiness behind that.
I don't know. I don't want to say that. I mean, based on how people described her, she definitely was. I don't think she was like arrogant in a negative way, but I think her personality was. I mean, I'm saying
she had to have an arrogance.
I mean, I'm saying she came from, like, imagine you were a slave. You come from nothing. You don't even know how to read, and then you go and you able to build this life that you couldn't even dream of, and you owning yourself fully and freely, man.
Yourself and others.
That's a bad woman. That ain't arrogance. That's tenacity of spirit. You know what I'm saying? That's tenacity of spirit.
I mean, she had so much going for her, and so much properties and investments that, you know, she was putting her family up. And her niece that she brought to St. Louis as a baby.
Not the niece, the sister, Nancy. Her sister, Nancy.
Right. Her sister.
Her sister, Nancy.
That she had brought to St. Louis. By this time, Nancy had 6 babies of her own.
Yeah.
And so Priscilla put her up in a house on Garfield Avenue.
Which I think was a pretty luxurious area at the time,
Yeah.
But with money, you know, as we all know, comes enemies, and a lot of times also scandal, right?
Right. So let's fast forward. It's now 1895, and 25 years have passed.
Yeah.
And Priscilla is sick of Thomas Howard.
And he knows it.
He knows his days are numbered.
Exactly. I mean, she's just tired of this man, right? She's tired.
So, you know, his income is getting cut short,
right?
Because she's about to push him out.
Yeah.
So how does he try to get paid? The old-fashioned way. Fraud. So Priscilla had a cook named Florence Williams, and Thomas approaches Florence with a plan and asks her to impersonate Priscilla.
Okay.
Right?
Right, yeah.
And so he tells her, all you need to do is put on this veil and cover up your face and go with me to the county office and sign Priscilla's mark on some documents. Now, Priscilla was illiterate, so what kind of mark did it have to be? When we read through the article and through some of the documents, it said to imitate her ex.
Her ex, right? So
her ex.
So a lot, and it wasn't uncommon.
That makes sense.
It wasn't uncommon for a lot of people to be illiterate back then, including white people.
Right.
But so they had an ex. So her ex apparently had its own characteristics.
So how if you had documents and all it's got on it is an X, how is it gonna be able to stand up in court and say, hey, that's not my X?
Well, would you think that if we don't write
I can write your X? Yes. I can scribble your X. It's not hard. It's 2 lines crossing the intersection in the middle. The middle, you know what I'm saying?
Right, which is why this plan was so ridiculous.
It was ridiculous
because you know, she didn't have a real signature, and then you got to remember that she shows up in a veil. So they get to the county office, and the clerk is like, "Looking at Florence," and he's like, "Why do you have on this veil?" And I don't know if he lifted the veil himself or he made her lift it, but nonetheless, she was forced to show her face at some point. And the clerk realizes that it was Florence trying to impersonate Priscilla. And he's like, this ain't happening today, right? So Florence, Thomas, and a third accomplice were all arrested for attempting to steal $25,000 of property trying to forge this deed, right? Priscilla's deed.
But that was only the beginning.
Unfortunately. So now, imagine this. Thomas is none too happy that his little plan with Florence did not work, right? He's not happy about this. So, and then around the same time, you know, he finds out that Priscilla has named her sister, Nancy, who we mentioned, Nancy Lake is her name, as the beneficiary to the majority of her estate.
Right.
In her will.
Right.
So Thomas, you know, he's just beside himself. He's like, she's about to throw me out on my butt. And then on top of that, you know, I'm not going to have no money. And then I got this head wound and I got this other special kind of limp.
Well, I think that he had money because he was financing her. But the type of money that he had become accustomed to, the type of money that Priscilla was making.
The lifestyle that
he didn't have that kind of money.
Right.
He had living in the Lindale Hotel money. That wasn't even in Lindale Hotel. That was the boarding house money. That's what he had.
He didn't have living in the royal money.
He didn't have living in the royal with marble floors and steam heat
Right,
money.
right.
No, he didn't have that.
So you can imagine that Thomas, while Thomas is walking around pouting about all of this stuff that's not working out in his favor, Priscilla starts to get very sick.
Right. Priscilla. Now Priscilla had battled indigestion for years. Right. Mm-hmm. But over the course of a few months, it began to worsen and she was unable to care for herself. And around this time, to add injury, what was it? Insult to injury.
Right.
Her sister Nancy suddenly died.
Right. She just died. Right. So let's recap. Thomas is mad.
Right.
Priscilla is very
got
sick.
Indigestion.
With
indigestion.
And Nancy has died. Nancy is the one that she had named as the majority
beneficiary
of her will. Right.
And so Nancy's daughter Ida Lath gets smart, and she had to have been the oldest of the 6 kids.
Yeah.
But she was also had to have been savvy. Mm-hmm. Especially having a
putting two
cool
and two together.
Aunt like Priscilla.
Right. She's putting two and two together. Right.
Putting 2 and 2 together.
Right.
And so she accused Thomas of poisoning both her mother and Priscilla. Right. And the allegations claimed that Florence Williams, under Howard's instruction, had been lacing the family's food with poison.
Now, Florence must have really hated Priscilla. Because I'm like, she already went up here and tried to help this white Confederate soldier defraud him.
Yeah.
And now she's being suspected of assisting him to poison not only her, but her family.
Yeah, her sister too. And her sister actually died. And so the whispers began about this whole thing. Right. And they thought, was he trying to eliminate Priscilla and her entire family? Right.
So we don't know that. But the coroner, they take the accusation seriously.
Right.
And they exhumed Nancy's body. And her organs were sent for analysis. Now, they didn't find any arsenic or anything like that. But they kind of suspected that it could have been opium poisoning, but the results were basically inconclusive, and so no charges for murder were ever filed against Thomas. However, the fraud case did remain open. Right.
And on a quiet Sunday afternoon around 3:15 p.m., as Thomas awaited trial for his fraud case, Priscilla eventually succumbed to her illness.
Right.
Indigestion. How does a person die from indigestion?
They don't, but they die from poisoning.
Right? So the local coroner checked for traces of opium and morphine in her system, but conclusive findings were never reported.
Yeah, unfortunately. So the case against Thomas, the fraud case that is, was dropped, and he never served any jail time. However, in around 1899, his body was discovered in the Mississippi River, not far from where he had first met Priscilla, in fact. So there were many rumors and guesses about, what had happened to him or how he had come to meet his fate, but, we'll never really know what happened, and heck, maybe it was Priscilla's ghost came back and pushed him in. I don't know.
Or her six nieces and nephews.
Her nieces,
or one of them. You know what I'm saying?
We'll never know.
Priscilla was already a gangster, so I'm sure she had a bunch of gangsters around her. But by the time of her death in 1895, Priscilla had amassed a fortune of over $100,000, which is like the equivalent of millions of dollars today.
Yeah.
And Priscilla Henry was many things: a madam, a mogul, and a survivor.
Yeah.
She was no saint. She was exploited. She exploited even. Yeah. She manipulated, and she amassed wealth from human vice.
Yeah.
But she was also brilliant, brave, and unbreakable. Her story is one of wealth, love, betrayal, and scandal in an era when black women were supposed to be invisible.
Yeah. And as Haas just said, her story is not easy to categorize. She was a businesswoman, and as you said, definitely a madam, and she was a survivor, and she ended up being a millionaire, in a world that tried to erase women's power at every turn. And there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, absolutely. She bought the plantation she was once enslaved on. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
That's not just a flex. It's a full circle revolution.
She was a legend. Undeniably a legend.
Undeniable.
And that's why we tell you these stories, because history isn't just about heroes and villains. It's about real people. Black people, white people, brown people, women who have made choices and built legacies and left behind more than the world was willing to acknowledge.
So if you felt something, during this, if you learned something during this video, or if this just made you think and say,
Yeah.
Please don't forget to like this video. It helps us to continue to make more videos. It helps to support us. And also please comment. And most importantly, hit that subscribe and that notification bell so you can be informed when we make more videos.
Right. And drop us a thought in the comments. Was Priscilla Henry a symbol of empowerment, or was she just a product of her time? Or did you think it was something else entirely?
Either way, her story deserves to be remembered.
Yeah.
And here on CeCe and Haas, we're going to make sure it does.
Yeah.
Until next time, guys.
Peace.
Peace.